Part 13. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 121. Chapter 121. Thank you, sister, for venting your anger on me. At the corner, Zhang Lingzi turned around and saw Su Ling'an with his head hanging down like a little quail. She raised her eyebrows, feeling that this girl's reaction was a bit funny. Why, are you afraid of me? Su Ling'an shook his head hurriedly. No, sister, I was at fault. What's wrong? You shouldn't go to a place like this when you are busy with studies. Zhang Lingzi. This made her suddenly feel like she had caught her child sneaking out to play without studying well. However, she heard everything this girl and her classmate said when they came in. Zhen Zhen is really similar to Jinan. He doesn't know how to refuse requests from people around him. Those two male classmates, did you play well with you at school? Su Ling'an was confused for a moment by the question. Although he didn't know why his sister asked suddenly, he still shook his head obediently and said, I'm not familiar with him, I'm just a classmate. But she is not stupid. Her sister will never ask her this question for no reason. Thinking back to the fact that her sister just named her to have a shooting competition with Li Fei and Han Ye, and beat the two of them so embarrassed, are they offended, sister? It's not me they offended. Zhang Lingzi looked into Su Ling'an's clean eyes. Although she couldn't bear it, she repeated the bet she heard the two boys talking about before, that female classmate of yours named Chan Chan, he should also be an insider. Su Ling'an's reaction after hearing these words was a bit beyond Zhang Lingzi's expectations. Although the little girl's eyes were a little hurt, she was still calm. Even the words of thanks were calm and mixed with gratitude. Thank you, sister, for venting my anger, I know what to do. Seeing this, Zhang Lingzi swallowed back her comforting words and reached out to pat her thin shoulder. Go back and study hard. Eat more if you are too thin. By the way, is your grandma feeling better? The hand on her shoulder was warm and full of security. It was exactly the same as the hand that helped her up that rainy night. Su Ling'an couldn't help but take a steady look, pursed his lower lip and nodded with a smile. Much better, I will be discharged from the hospital in about a week, thank you, sister, for your concern. Let's go back. Su Ling'an turned around and took 2 steps, then suddenly turned back and said, Sister. Su Ling'an took a breath and said, I have discussed with Grandma and want to treat you to a meal as a thank you after I am discharged from the hospital. I just don't know if you will have time then. Zhang Lingzi pondered for a moment, nodded and replied, call me in advance so I can arrange the time. Su Ling'an nodded solemnly, and for a moment he felt that the clouds in his heart were completely blown away, and the bright sunshine shone down again. Sister, have fun. Walking back to Lin Chan, Su Ling'an said bluntly before Lin Chan could speak, Chan Chan, I'm not interested in the games here, so I'm going back. Since Li Fei and Han Ye are here, you can go with them. Let's play. After saying that, she pretended not to see Lin Chan coming to hold her hand, escaped without leaving a trace, and walked towards the entrance of the arcade. She would not expose Lin Chan's plan in public. After all, there were still more than 2 months until graduation, and it was also an important period approaching the college entrance examination. If she did, it would cause complications. But he has decided to distance himself from these 3 people. Enan. Lin Chan shouted, but when she saw Su Ling'an leaving without even pausing, she felt panicked and could no longer move forward as she prepared to pursue him. Although Su Ling'an is often said to be a nerd behind his back and only knows how to study, he is recognized as a smart person. Could he have noticed her little scheme? Until a figure separated Su Ling'an's back and saw the blue hair, the 3 people standing there took 3 steps back in reflex. Su Miao saw the scene just after she had prepared cash and the general ticket for the arcade. She twitched the corner of her mouth, coughed slightly and announced, Congratulations to the 4 of you for completing the challenge. Miss, This is your cash reward of 1000 yuan. For the 3 juniors, this is the universal ticket for your video game city. She paused. After a pause, juniors have worked really hard. Zhang Lingzi took the 1000 yuan in cash from Da Fang Fang, and anyone could see that she was in a good mood. It was a good thing for her to be relieved, to have someone to play with, and to get money. However, in comparison, the mood of the other 3 people was not so beautiful. Looking at the pass that was handed over to the arcade city, everyone had an expression on their face as if they had eaten a fly. Well, senior sister, Li Fei scratched the back of his head and couldn't help but hiss because of the injuries on his body. We don't want tickets anymore. Can you not send out the video you took? I thought that my side would definitely win against a young lady, and when the video was released, it would also be their handsome kill. Unexpectedly, the actual characters were completely different. The handsome one was the young lady, and they were the ones who were brutally tortured. It would be a shame if this were published. They would rather not get this consolation vote. Su Miao smiled and refused. No, the video has been sent back to the studio, and the editing and post-production process has already begun. Manly man, I am willing to admit defeat, she said, and put the tickets directly into the hands of the 3 people who were about to cry. Turning his head and looking at Zhang Lingzi with bright eyes, he said, "Sister, can I add you as a friend? If you have an account on Quanman Video, I will follow you when the video is posted." Zhang Lingzi waved her hand, "No need." Su Miao could feel some of Zhang Lingzi's character and knew that she would definitely not make any progress. Although she was a little disappointed, she still cheered up and waved her hand. "Okay, little sister, we will meet again when we are destined." Zhang Lingzi also waved to her, turned around and left without any delay. Su Miao watched the handsome figure leave and waved to the 3 people who were still standing there. "Juniors and sisters, we are destined to meet again." 3 people. It's better not to say goodbye. That evening, Zhang Lingzi asked for leave to deal with personal matters, and Lu Zhengzheng, his assistant, was also put on leave. She didn't go out to play, so she ordered a roast duck takeout at home and wrapped the duck meat in a burrito while watching short videos. She had just stuffed the rolled duck meat into her mouth when she saw a prompt on the screen that an account she was following had just posted a short video, and she clicked on it. The super dashing blue-haired girl is killing everyone at the shooting range. Is this street challenge so hardcore? Out of curiosity, she clicked to start playing. When he saw the girl with blue hair and black-rimmed glasses, she looked like a different person. The Sprite she had just taken in her mouth sprayed directly on the roast duck in the box. I must have been dazzled just now. Everyone looked like Sister Zixi. End of this chapter. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 122. Chapter 122. I want to see the Shen family tree. 8 p.m. Zhang Lingzi brought out the pork rib soup she had just stewed, and saw the phone on the dining table vibrating wildly several times. She put the soup down calmly, then picked up her phone to unlock it and clicked on the message sent by Lu Zhengzheng. "Sister Zixi, tell me quickly, this is not you." Attached is a screenshot of her wearing a blue wig and glasses. "Zhang Lingzi, it's me, did you get it?" Lu Zhengzheng hurriedly replied, "I like to watch short videos while eating, so I accidentally caught you abusing 3 high school students." Zhang Lingzi glanced at the dinner that had just been prepared on the table before she had a chance to take a bite. She simply started a video call, then put down her phone and served herself a small bowl of pork rib soup. After taking a sip, she said, "I just went out to play in disguise play. If you get pulled into playing the game, just do it as long as you can." Lu Zhengzheng looked at the delicious food on the screen, and then at the roast duck soaked in Sprite in front of her. After swallowing silently, she couldn't help but ask, "Sister Zixi, are you not afraid of being cheated by everyone? Do you recognize it?" "I think my disguise is pretty good," Zhang Lingzi looked at Lu Zhengzheng with a blank expression. You can recognize me because you have seen the real me and often follow me, but those people outside are basically they have only seen my photos or videos, but they have never seen me in person. Moreover, Zhang Lingzi wearing a wig and glasses and crowding the subway with others, do they think it is Zhang Lingzi? Lu Zhengzheng couldn't help but nodded. If I hadn't seen Sister Zixi dressed like this, I wouldn't have believed that you could still disguise yourself like this. Then it would be impossible for others to think of it. Wait, Zixi sister, are you still taking the subway? Zhang Lingzi nodded. To be precise, she had taken all the public transportation in the city in the past 2 days. It had to be said that it was really convenient. Of course there is no need to say this. Sister Zixi, do you want to inform Sister Tong about your participation in this short video? What if, Sister Zixi, your fans really recognize you? Do I still have fans? Lu Zhengzheng was stunned by the rhetorical question. This question is asked. She chirped and said, the face fans may not be at the ashes level, but there should be some black fans. This time it was Zhang Lingzi who was speechless. She raised her forehead and waved her hand, then let me know. Sister Zixi, please eat first, I'll contact Sister Tong. Hang up the video. Zhang Lingzi used the same speed as before to sweep away the food in front of her. She had a hunch that after Lu Zhengzheng finished contacting Tong Yu's call would come. Sure enough, before she could put the dishes into the dishwasher, her cell phone rang. Sister Tong. I watched the short video. The shooting was good, the editing was pretty good, and you got the reward of 1000 yuan, right? Well, it's still cash. Tong Yu couldn't help but take a deep breath. You are so capable, you go out disguised as a little girl, and you bully high school students. What do you mean, little sister? Zhang Lingzi first expressed her doubts and then defended herself. I don't call it bullying. We are friendly competition, but the gap in strength is a bit big. I didn't expect those children to be so weak. Tong Yu felt that her blood pressure, which had been rising just after tutoring her children's homework, was now soaring. Little sister, forget it, I just said the wrong thing. You were really having a friendly discussion, and your archery is so accurate. Playing with toy wooden warehouse is not a one-time thing. As for beating people dozens of times before they are eliminated? Tell me, why are you targeting those high school students? She was answered with silence. Tong Yu waited patiently for a moment, feeling that her blood was rising and her head started to hurt. If you don't tell me, there must be some reason. Anyway, this video has been posted. I just watched it and I liked it. It's already over 10,000, and it's useless even if I delete it now. Please remember this from now on. You are a public figure, and even if you have legitimate reasons to do something, you must also consider the consequences of doing so. From the time he started taking a bath to going to bed, Zhang Lingzi was so sleepy that she interrupted Tong Yu's mumbling, Sister Tong, I'm going to rest. Tong Yu, do you remember everything I said? Well, remember. Sleep. Hang up the phone. Tong Yu touched the already hot phone and sighed. She is really born to worry about her life. Asterisk. Probably because the chatter last night was too powerful. When Zhang Lingzi heard her cell phone ringing early the next morning, her first reaction was to pick it up and hang up. The noise disappeared, and after she relaxed in bed again, she opened her eyes and looked at the time. 8:05. Zhang Lingzi turned over and sat up. As I got out of bed and put on my slippers, I was about to call back when I heard the doorbell ring. Zhang Lingzi. Do you want it to come so quickly? The door of the room was opened by her. Outside the door is Shen Yunqing, who is wearing a suit and tie, and even his hair is taken care of extremely carefully. Inside the door is Zhang Lingzi, who is wearing pajamas with long hair that are still somewhat messy and only a shawl wrapped around her head. Looking at each other, the two of them were silent for a moment. Zhang Lingzi, She misses Qing Yuan very much at the moment. Finally, Shen Yunqing broke the silence at the door. He picked up the food box in his hand. I thought you might not have had breakfast yet, so I brought some over. He wanted to solve it in the car, but the call was hung up as soon as he got through, so he had to carry the food box up. Come in and sit wherever you like. Shen Yunqing didn't dare to sit casually. He put the food box on the dining table, pulled out a chair and sat down in a proper manner without even looking around. Zhang Lingzi wrapped her shawl around her body and glanced at Shen Yunqing's back, which was sitting upright. Wait for me to go back to the house and tidy up. Good. When she changed her clothes and pulled up her hair and came out, she saw that the food in the food box had been neatly placed on the dining table, and even the chopsticks and spoons had been put away. Going to the dining table, Zhang Lingzi glanced at the dishes on the table, which were almost all to her taste, and then moved her eyes to Shen Yunqing's face. Last time she went over to see the other party who was sick and she wore a mask throughout the whole meeting, so she couldn't see her whole face. At this moment, the other person's face was no longer covered, revealing his true face. He was beautiful in bones, pure in spirit, pure and natural in nature. Looking at the face in front of her that was somewhat similar to her memory but much younger, Zhang Lingzi found that what she was thinking at the moment was actually. That's how it should be. In her eyes, this person should have looked like this. After sitting down and taking a sip of porridge that was just right for her, Zhang Lingzi suddenly said, Shen Yunqing. Exist. Zhang Lingzi's hand holding the spoon paused. Can I see the genealogy of your Shen family? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 123. Although this request is a bit presumptuous, Good. This time, Zhang Lingzi was a little stunned because of Shen Yunqing's cheerfulness. But the Shen family tree is not in Z1, it is in the ancestral hall of the Shen family's old house. Zhang Lingzi shook her head. There's no rush for this. Genealogy records the inheritance of a family for thousands of years and has always been treasured by the patriarch and others of the family. She originally thought that this purpose would be difficult to achieve, but the result was unexpectedly smooth. Then it's not worth seeing it early or late. Then Zhang Lingzi quietly ate the breakfast brought by Shen Yunqing. As soon as she put down her chopsticks with her right hand, a paper towel folded in half was handed over to her left hand. She subconsciously took it and paused while wiping the corners of her lips. After putting down the tissue, she looked towards Shen Yunqing, who was sitting quietly aside. This silent and considerate manner made her unable to help but think of another figure. In his sight, the two figures slowly merged until Shen Yunqing raised his eyes and looked over. Zhang Lingzi shook her head without leaving a trace. She was really stunned just now. Shen Yunqing pretended not to notice that the atmosphere just now was unusual, and asked softly, Have you eaten yet? Zhang Lingzi nodded, stood up, picked up the dishes on the table, and prepared to put them in the dishwasher in the kitchen. Shen Yunqing looked at her actions, then froze for a moment, and hurriedly stood up to help. How about I invite a nanny to come over? He had never seen this man doing such a trivial household chore. Now that I see it, I realize that I was still a little negligent. Without Qingyuan and Yi Gongren, even though the current world is much more convenient than the previous life, trivial matters still have to be done by oneself. Without thinking, Zhang Lingzi shook her head and refused. No, I don't live at home very often, I only cook for myself occasionally. Besides, I'm not used to strangers on my territory. Shen Yunqing wanted to say that the person he invited would not be a stranger. If he was to be invited here, even if it was not as appropriate as Qingyuan's, it would not be much worse. But after noticing the expression on Zhang Lingzi's face, she swallowed her words. Your Majesty doesn't seem to find this trivial matter very troublesome, and rather enjoys it. It was almost 9 o'clock when she went out. As soon as she got out of the elevator, Zhang Lingzi received a call from Zhang Wenhui. Mom. Shen Yunqing, who was half a step behind, couldn't help but look up. His Majesty seems to be adapting well to his current status. Whether it is career or family. Accept him. Have you gone out with Xiao Shen? Zhang Lingzi glanced at the person walking beside her, has gone downstairs and is about to drive over. That's good. You two, don't go around to pick us up. Your dad and I are going to take a taxi there. We'll meet at the gate of the juvenile detention center then. That's fine, then be careful on the road and see you later. You too. Walking to the car, Shen Yunqing stepped forward and opened the door. Zhang Lingzi bent down and got into the car while talking on the phone. After sitting down, she saw Shen Yunqing getting in the car right behind her. She moved in, put down the cell phone she had just hung up, and looked at the driver's seat in front of her. A loud voice sounded in the carriage that had just closed the door. Good morning, madam. Zhang Lingzi, good morning. Shen Yunqing coughed lightly and introduced to Zhang Lingzi, this is the driver Zhao Hu. Madam, just call me Xiao Zhao or Hu Zi. Are you leaving now? Let's go. The commercial vehicle slid smoothly out of the parking place, and after exiting the community, it merged into the morning rush hour traffic without leaving a trace. Zhang Lingzi felt it after a while in the car. The car was terrifyingly stable. It has the performance blessing of the car itself and the skill of the driver. The idea of poaching people is a little bit ready. But she didn't open this mouth until she reached her destination. Because she thought of a very sad fact. Even if she hired people, she wouldn't have a car with such good performance for them to drive. Furthermore, the salary she can offer may not be much higher than that of Shen Yunqing. Forget it. Just after I got off the car, I received a call from Zhang Wenhui. Zioxi, are you here? Just arrived. We'll have to wait a while. The morning rush hour is too congested. Master, how long will it take to get there? 10 minutes, Zioxi, we'll be there in 10 minutes, please wait a moment. Hang up the phone, Zhang Lingzi looked at the driver Zhao Hu, who was standing behind Shen Yunqing like a pagoda. My parents seem to be closer to here. Zhao Hu grinned, and 2 rows of big white teeth suddenly appeared on his dark face. I have been wandering in the streets and alleys of this imperial capital since I was a child. I just saw the main road was crowded, so I took the shortcut, which can save almost half an hour. Zhang Lingzi kept pace with the times and reached out to give him a thumbs up. Shen Yunqing's eyes were slightly closed. People are still hired by him, don't they deserve a praise? Asterisk. In a juvenile detention center. After listening to the last ideological and moral lesson, Zhang Lingzi went back to the dormitory to change into his own clothes, picked up his packed bag, and finally stuffed the book on the bed that had some pages curled up by him into the mezzanine of the bag. Turn around and walk toward the door. In the corridor, he happened to bump into Sule, who was released from the juvenile detention center on the same day as him next door. Compared with the packed luggage bag in his hand, the luggage in Sule's hand was almost negligible under the man's tall figure. The two paused and looked at each other for a moment. Sule stretched out his arms and put his arms around Zhang Lingxi's shoulders. Let me just say that we are destined to be brothers. If we come in front and back, we should go out on the same day. The two of them live close to each other, and in the past 3 years they have been doing group activities together, so Zhang Lingxiu also knows more or less about Sule's deeds. For negligent injury, the injured person is more seriously injured than the person he originally injured, and the corresponding sentence is also heavier. But compared to the roommates in his dormitory who were always looking for trouble, Sule's temperament was quite to his liking. And based on his long-term observation of this person, there might be some unknown reason why that mistake her people. So at this moment he glanced at Sulei's hand on his shoulder, but he just frowned without shaking it off. Don't you still have 2 months to go out? Brother, can't you lose weight for 2 months because of your good performance? Sule raised his eyebrows proudly. What are your plans after you go out? Zhang Lingxiu was silent for a moment. I don't know. We are like this. After we go out, no school will dare to accept us. How about you hang out with me? With you, what are you trying to do? Although I don't have much money, I still have some connections outside. By then, we can learn a skill and start a small business or something. We will definitely not starve to death. Anyway, you go back and think about it carefully. If you think about it, go to Nanjing Internet Cafe to find me. I should stay there after I go out. By the way, will your family come to pick you up today? My sister is here today, Sule said with pride on his face. Her academic performance is good, but she is not. She got second place, but she didn't listen to me when I asked her to study hard at school and insisted on picking me up. Zhang Lingxiu. Are you complaining? You are clearly showing off. But he was not envious. After Sule finished showing off, he said calmly, my father, mother, sister, and my brother-in-law all came to take me home. Sule. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 124. Two taxis, one in front and one behind, stopped at the gate of the juvenile detention center almost at the same time. Zhang Lingzi looked over and saw Zhang Wenhui and Zhang Runqing getting out of the taxi in front, and raised her feet to greet them. Shen Yunqing followed her. When she arrived, she waited for Zhang Lingzi to finish calling her parents, and then also called her uncle and aunt. Zhang Wenhui responded with a smile, her face full of joy. Seeing that her son would be coming home soon, and that her daughter and son-in-law were loving and harmonious, she was so happy that she almost wanted to cry. Zhang Runqing tried his best to maintain the dignity of the head of the family, and his face, which was a little red due to the recent drinking, also softened. Yunqing, you are so busy, why do you come here specially? Should. Let's go in, Zhang Lingzi greeted, but she turned around halfway when she caught sight of a figure getting out of another taxi out of the corner of her eye, and her figure froze. Shen Yunqing was the first to notice and followed her gaze. When he saw the thin figure wearing a white school uniform, he raised his eyebrows slightly. Somewhat familiar. The next second, Zhang Lingzi shouted, Enan. Shen Yunqing took a breath. Su Linggan was even more panicked after being called. As soon as she got out of the car, she didn't notice that there were some people she knew around not far away, until she was called by a familiar voice. She subconsciously looked over and met the eyes of her sister looking over. After hesitating for a few seconds, she jogged forward and said, Sister. After being surprised just now, Shen Yunqing has returned to his usual composure. He only looks at the little girl who looks like Princess Jinan in front of him with a little unnoticeable scrutiny. However, Zhang Wenhui and Zhang Runqing are starting to be surprised. Zioxi, when did you get a younger sister? They are parents who don't even know. I recognized it myself, Zhang Lingzi explained briefly. She was now more curious about why the girl in front of her appeared here. Today is Tuesday, you are not in school, why are you here? I'm here to pick you up, Su Lingyan said and carefully looked at Zhang Lingzi's expression. Seeing that she didn't show anything strange, he continued to explain, I have a brother next door who accidentally injured himself while trying to save me. Today is the day he is released from the juvenile detention center. Zhang Lingzi wanted to ask her what danger had occurred. It was serious enough that she was sent to a juvenile detention center. It was definitely not a trivial matter, but this was obviously not the time to say this. That's right, let's go in together. Su Lingyan looked at the three people who were looking at her and hesitated, is sister here to pick someone up too? Well, come to pick up my brother. He is also out of the juvenile detention center today. By the way, these are my parents, this is. When Shen Yunqing was introduced, Zhang Lingzi paused. If Zhang Wenhui and Zhang Runqing were not here, she could still call them friends, but now that they are both here, she had no choice but to honestly admit someone's identity. Shen Yunqing, I am the target. Shen Yunqing tried hard to keep the corners of his mouth from rising. Su Ling'an's small mouth was wide enough to fit an egg in. It wasn't until Zhang Lingzi patted her on the shoulder that she suddenly came back to her senses. She bowed politely to Zhang Wenhui and Zhang Runqing. Hello, uncle and aunt, I am Su Ling'an. He looked at his sister's partner again and said, Sister, hello, brother-in-law. After Shen Yunqing heard the name, he became more and more aware. Although he still didn't know how the two people knew each other, it didn't stop him from feeling that the brother-in-law's call was particularly beautiful. Hello. After submitting your identity certificate at the gate, a staff member will go in and notify you. After a while, the 5 people waiting at the gate saw 2 figures walking side by side. Before her son could get closer, Zhang Wenhui couldn't wait to shout, Xiao Su. Zhang Lingxiu's pace towards the gate suddenly quickened, and Su Lei beside him followed closely. Look, my sister is here too. The one in school uniform. Zhang Lingxiu could only look away, and met a pair of curved eyes. His eyes were stunned for a moment, and then his gaze fell behind Zhang Lingzi. When he entered the juvenile detention center, his sister was not married yet and did not even have a boyfriend. Until half a year ago, his mother came to visit him. The first thing she said was that her sister had received a certificate, and she didn't even have a wedding, she just got married in a low-key manner. Speaking of which, they consider each other's brother-in-law and brother-in-law, and this is the first time they have officially met. But with a brother-in-law like him, a rich man like brother-in-law should feel ashamed. Zhang Lingxiu paused at the thought of this, but Su Lei soon grabbed his arm and started running all the way. Why are you still lingering? Don't say you are still nostalgic for this rotten place. I didn't. It's just that I'm timid when I'm close to home. After patiently listening to the staff's last instructions on the theme of be sure to abide by the law when you go out, Zhang Wenhui looked at her son and called her mom while standing in front of her, instead of being unable to touch him through the thick glass. One couldn't help but burst into tears. My Xiaoxu. In front of his father, sister, and brother-in-law, Zhang Lingxiu was hugged by his mother while she was crying. Zhang Lingxiu was a little embarrassed and stiff at first, but when he noticed the dampness and heat on his shoulders, he realized that his vision was also blurry. Mom, I am ignorant and I have made you worry. Zhang Runqing patted his youngest son's shoulder heavily and said, just come out. Zhang Wenhui and Zhang Lingxiu were not the only ones crying. Su Ling'an also started to sniffle when he saw the scar that was almost as long as a finger on Su Lei's head. Brother Xiao Lei, originally grandma was also coming, but the headache came back and the doctor refused to discharge me. Why did grandma come to pick me up at such an old age? If you didn't insist on coming, I wouldn't want you to come. Is grandma feeling better now? Much better. Brother Xiaolei, where are you? I'm fine. It doesn't matter who I am. Who can bully me? Su Lei finished with a confident look on his face. Seeing Su Ling'an burst into tears, he smiled, and then pointed at Zhang Lingxiu, who was still crying in Zhang Wenhui's arms. No, I also met a buddy in there, and we happened to come out together this time. After Zhang Wenhui vented her anger, she finally remembered the business. She took out a grapefruit leaf branch from her bag, patted her youngest son, and muttered, all bad luck will be gone, all bad luck will be gone. And she patted Zhang Lingxiu all over. Give up. When he was about to put it back in the bag, he saw the brother and sister on the side again. Gerlanan didn't bring this, did you want this from me? Grapefruit leaves can remove bad luck. Su Lei was about to shake his head and refuse, because he didn't want to be stupid and get slapped all over his body by this thing. But he didn't allow him to refuse. Su Ling'an had already walked over and shouted thank you, auntie, and took the grapefruit leaf branch. He had no choice but to open his arms and let Su Ling'an pat him back and forth, shouting all bad luck is gone. You are still in high school, do you believe this? Su Ling'an just pretended not to hear and patted him all over. Zhang Lingxiu only felt that his whole body was now filled with the fragrance of grapefruit leaves. Is there no other ceremony? As soon as he finished speaking, a delicately woven red rope appeared in front of him. Wear the red rope to get rid of bad luck and bring good luck, and you will be safe and happy in the future. Zhang Lingxiu's eyes followed the slender fingers holding the red string and slowly moved to his brother-in-law standing next to his sister. He always felt that the scene was more like an illusion. Brother-in-law. This is the rich brother-in-law that his mother mentioned. Nothing wrong? Hold out your hand. Zhang Lingxiu stretched out his hand mechanically, watched helplessly as the red rope was fixed on his wrist, and moved his mouth. Thank you, brother-in-law. You're welcome. As soon as Zhang Lingxi looked away from the red rope, she met Zhang Wenhui's gaze. Did you two prepare it? Zhang Lingxi, can she say that she doesn't know when this person prepared it? The hiding ground is quite tight. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 125. Shen Yunqing, who had successfully gained a lot of favor from his brother-in-law when they first met Zhang Lingxi's gaze with an impeccable smile on her lips. Since His Majesty has accepted the original relatives, he will also treat the Zhang family as relatives. The most important thing is to follow His Majesty's footsteps closely. Zhang Wenhui has not let go of her youngest son's hand since she held her hand. Mom also booked a table at a restaurant near home. We will eat there at noon. Although there was no shortage of food and clothing when I was in the juvenile detention center, it was still a big pot of rice in the cafeteria. It was enough to ensure that it was cooked and hygienic. The taste could only be said to be edible. Zhang Lingxiu couldn't help but swallowed quietly, but he still remembered the scene of hiding at home and being knocked on the door to demand debts. It's better not to go to the restaurant to eat. Let's go home and cook for ourselves. Zhang Wenhui's eyes became hot again after hearing this. When the family was not bankrupt, the family no longer went to high-end restaurants to eat. Even the chef hired by the family was of a level that could serve as a restaurant chef. Her sons and daughters were spoiled by her, and those who asked for the stars but not the moon could taste all the delicacies of mountains and seas. 3 years have passed in the blink of an eye, and her daughter has given up her studies and joined the entertainment industry to make money. Even her youngest son is so sensible that it makes her feel uncomfortable. It's just that the cost of being sensible is a bit high. The family is not short of money for this meal now, Zhang Wenhui insisted. Besides, it's too late to go back, and you know your sister and I's craftsmanship. She used to be a rich lady who never touched the sun in the past few years. She started to cook hard, and the food she cooked was only edible. Zhang Lingxiu, then let's go to the restaurant. There are only a few of them. At worst, they will order a few cheap dishes with large portions, and never order more expensive dishes with smaller portions. Finally got out of the big pot, and to be honest, he was really a little greedy. Let's eat something good first, and then go back to eat his mother's cooking. Su Ling'an and Su Lei came over to say goodbye, but Zhang Lingxi stopped them. You two should come together too. How? Before Su Ling'an could finish her polite refusal, Zhang Wenhui grabbed her wrist. I was about to say, this place is far away from the city, so it's not easy to take a taxi. You two, brother and sister, come with us and have a meal before going back. 2 more pairs of chopsticks would be great too. Su Ling'an was still a little embarrassed, but Su Lei nodded readily. Thank you, auntie, then and I will be polite. Zhang Lingxiu stood aside. As soon as he took his eyes away from the tips of Su Ling'an's red ears, he was glared at by Su Lei, touched his nose and looked up at the sky. An 8-seater business car, just big enough for 8 people. Sule is a good at enlivening the atmosphere. Even if he is sitting in the passenger seat, his voice is not missing along the way. Zhang Lingzi also learned more about Su Lingan's past from his words. I have had no father since I was a child. When I was a baby, I was picked up from the roadside and brought home by my mother who had some mental problems. When I was in elementary school, my mother got lost again, and I have been living with my grandmother ever since. When I was in the 3rd grade of junior high school, I encountered a fatal danger. If Sule hadn't arrived in time, the consequences would have been disastrous. Sule also entered the juvenile detention center. The past is described in a very general way, but with twists and turns that are unimaginable to ordinary people. Zhang Lingzi suddenly thought of a sentence she accidentally saw on her mobile phone 2 days ago: although this is a seemingly peaceful society, you have a healthy body, your parents are alive, and you have 1 or 2 brothers and sisters who can help each other. Not rich but not lacking in food and clothing. Having a job that can support oneself is already better than most people in the world. Many people are still struggling and trying their best to survive. She held Su Lingan's hand, which was sitting next to her, and it felt a little bit cold. Wear more clothes. Su Lingan nodded obediently. If Zhang Lingzi's distress was in her eyes and heart, then Zhang Wenhui actually showed it on her face. Her first impression of Su Lingan was very good. The little girl was good-looking, well-behaved, sensible, and polite, but she had some obvious frailties in her body, which made her feel pity at first sight. It is really heartbreaking to learn that this child has such a tortuous life experience. Be good, this day will eventually be filled with joy and sorrow. Zhang Lingzi pursed his lips. He originally thought that his life was bad enough, and he was confused about what else to do. But compared with this girl named Su Lingan, he seemed a little pretentious. At least he is in good health and has parents, sisters, and brothers-in-law who care about him, so what else can he be dissatisfied about? He should be grateful for everything he has now and pursue more possibilities while he is still young, instead of staying in the past and feeling sorry for himself. The haze hidden in my heart quietly dissipated, revealing little bits of sunshine. The restaurant Zhang Wenhui chose is just an old restaurant run by a couple for more than 20 years. It specializes in home-cooked dishes and the prices are not expensive. However, the fact that it has been open for more than 20 years at least proves that the restaurant has a good reputation. Considering that her daughter is a public figure, she specially asked for a box. Su Lingan also breathed a sigh of relief after seeing the menu posted on the wall of the restaurant lobby. If it was really expensive, she would want to find an excuse to leave early. After all, she had eaten the meal invited by her sister's mother before she had a chance to treat her sister to a meal. Entering the private room, Zhang Lingzi looked at the menu thrust into his hand, carefully ordered a few dishes, and handed it to Sule. Even though Sule graciously accepted the invitation, when it came time to order, he searched every corner of the menu and finally ordered the cheapest dish of spicy and sour potato shreds. I just like this dish, can you, just eat 4 big steamed buns. Zhang Wenhui couldn't see it, took the menu and added 2 more hard dishes, then looked at her daughter, Zixi, do you want to eat anything? Just as Zhang Lingzi was about to wave her hand and say enough, she saw a hand stretched out in front of her, followed by the voice of Shen Yunqing sitting on her left. Auntie, let me take a look. Add more, beef fillet with double pepper and steamed mandarin fish, thank you. Zhang Lingzi couldn't help but turn her head and glance at Shen Yunqing. In ancient times, cows were sometimes more valuable than people. It was even illegal to eat beef. Even the king of a country did not have beef dishes on his menu. The first time she ate beef was during a private visit incognito. She happened to encounter a farmer's cow giving birth, but it was difficult to give birth. In the end, neither the cow nor the calf survived. Although the farmer was extremely grieved, he reported the incident and had the cow slaughtered. Only then did she taste the taste of beef. It was not until the Ministry of Agriculture finally bred beef cattle that grew quickly that they could be eaten, and she realized the freedom of beef. If it were just this one dish, she could still call it a coincidence, but with the addition of steamed mandarin fish, which she also likes to eat. She had reason to wonder, could this person have specifically inquired about her taste with Tong Yu and the others? Just pretending to be affectionate in front of your parents doesn't mean you have to work so hard. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 126. As the dishes they ordered came out one after another, Zhang Lingxiu and Su Lei felt somewhat like hungry wolves pounced on their food. Just waiting for Zhang Lingzi and Shen Yunqing to move their chopsticks, they silently slowed down their eating speed. Otherwise, there will always be the illusion that one is reincarnated as a starving ghost. It took nearly 2 hours to finish the last meal. Su Lei finished the last bowl of rice before putting down his chopsticks. Looking at the clean plates on the table, he nodded with satisfaction. One of the themes of his life, even if it lasts to death, it cannot be wasted. After coming out of the restaurant, Su Linggan said goodbye. Zhang Lingzi watched her and Su Lei get into a taxi. After getting back in the car, she looked at the road to a nearby community and asked, "Would you like to find another place to live?" A flash of emotion flashed across Zhang Wenhui's face. She moved her mouth and was about to speak when Zhang Runqing took a step ahead of her. "What would I change? It's a good life here. But now Xiaoxu is back." The neighbors in the old community where they live now are mostly retired elderly people. Young people prefer new communities and apartments with convenient facilities and transportation. In fact, living in the old community is not bad. Although it is a bit dilapidated, the pace of life is slow and comfortable. However, there is one thing that worries her the most. Some old people have nothing to do after they retire, so they like to get together and chatter about their parents' problems. The accident 3 years ago was originally confined to their unit building. Later, a few retired old ladies around them nagged almost the entire community to know that their family had a child who was in a juvenile detention center. Now that Xiaoxu has come out of the juvenile detention center, if he is seen by those old ladies, there will be another conversation. She was used to hearing it, but she was afraid that her children would not be able to bear it. The daughter suddenly asked them this, probably taking this into consideration. People's words are scary, and the sword in words sometimes hurts more than a real knife stabbing someone in the body. "Mom," Zhang Lingxiu said suddenly, "don't worry, I'm fine." To be precise, he was mentally prepared. The people around him pointed at him and discussed that he had stabbed someone and was sent to a juvenile detention center. These were inevitable whenever he went out. As long as he tried hard to pretend that he didn't hear them, or didn't take it easy if he heard them. This time it was Zhang Runqing who changed his tune because he thought it would be troublesome to move. Looking at his son who has lost his impetuousness and become more determined, and even has a faint shadow of his youth, Zhang Runqing said solemnly, "Forget it, let's move. Anyway, I have enough living in this community now, and there are always power outages, damn it. If you want to move this time, just move to a better neighborhood." Seeing Zhang Wenhui was about to speak, he took out his mobile phone and handed it over. "I had a drink with Lao Lu before, and he took me to invest in a small project. Although the dividends are not much, it should be enough to rent a better house," as he said. He added he turned to look at his son-in-law sitting in the row behind him. "Yun Qing, I have been too depressed in the past few years and I am not familiar with the current situation of renting a house. Your aunt and brother have no way to find a house. I am thinking about finding a house. I have to trouble you." "Uncle, you're welcome," Shen Yunqing nodded and responded, "I'll take care of this. You can pack your luggage tonight, or I'll ask someone to come over and help tomorrow." After Zhang Lingzi silently withdrew the message she had just sent to Tong Yu asking her to help find a house, she raised her head and glanced to the side. Has this person completely integrated himself into the role of the Zhang family's son-in-law? Zhang Wenhui also breathed a sigh of relief after seeing the bank card balance displayed on her husband's mobile phone. He nodded repeatedly and said, "Oh, okay, okay, there's no need to be in such a hurry. There's no need to ask for help. We don't have much, we can do it ourselves." The commercial vehicle was parked under the old unit building, attracting the attention of many surrounding residents. Zhang Wenhui originally planned to keep a low profile as a family, but she was stopped before she even entered the apartment building. "Wenhui, is this a relative coming to your family? Oops, why does this young man look familiar? Is this Xiaoxu? Has Xiaoxu been released from the juvenile detention center?" Zhang Wenhui wanted to rush up and block the person's mouth. Is it so loud that everyone will look this way if they hear it? Zhang Lingxiu still remembers the fat ant walking over in front of him. "It's me, Aunt Su." Xiao Su is more polite than before. It seems that the juvenile detention center is better at educating people. Just when the veins on Zhang Wenhui's forehead were about to pop out, Zhang Lingzi and Shen Yunqing got out of the car one after another. "Why haven't you gone in yet?" Aunt Su turned her head and looked over when she heard the sound, and then couldn't help but open her mouth. When Zhang Lingzi looked over at her, she was even more timid before she even said a word. This is my daughter-in-law and son-in-law." Zhang Wenhui straightened her back and replied, "We have been busy for a long time and have to go back to the house to rest. Let's talk back, Sister Su." Aunt Su had no choice but to suppress her desire to speak and nodded stiffly, "Okay, okay." Entering the somewhat dim corridor, Zhang Lingzi turned on the camera on her mobile phone and said casually while climbing the stairs, "Be careful where you step." Shen Yunqing, who was walking behind her, smiled and replied, "Yeah." Zhang Lingzi pursed her lips. It was because the corridor was too dark, and she was not afraid that Master Shen would accidentally fall over. Zhang Wenhui opened the door and turned on the light in the living room. "Xiao Su, come in quickly." Zhang Lingxiu stood at the door, looking at the familiar yet unfamiliar small living room in front of him, and paused. It was in this living room back then that the debtor came in and smashed the money arbitrarily when he heard that he had no money. There was chaos after that, with screams and the sound of things breaking. It was like there were countless bees flying in his mind. It was not until the handcuffs were put on his wrists that he felt that his normal hearing was restored. Since then, I have been taken out of this room. 3 years have passed and I have not returned until now. The living room seems to have been specially tidied up. Although it is small, it is also clean, and there is a faint scent of air freshener. But somehow he couldn't move. Until there was an extra hand on the shoulder, and then he was pushed. "Why are you blocking the door? Your sister and I are still behind." Zhang Lingxiu stumbled into the room, shrank his neck and stood up straight. Just then I realized what I was afraid of, that I was afraid of falling into the nightmare I had before. Until he was pushed by the hand from his sister, it was like he had stepped over a hurdle in a trance. The nightmare is over. The small 3-person sofa in the living room was not enough to sit on, so Zhang Lingxiu dragged 2 more chairs from the small restaurant nearby. After they were able to sit down, they started talking about the moving away from here that they had mentioned before in the car. Shen Yunqing took a sip of the mineral water Zhang Lingzi handed her, screwed the bottle cap and held it in her hand. "Do uncle, aunt, and Xiao Su have any areas of interest?" Nanjing District. It was Zhang Lingzi who answered him. "I heard from my assistant that Nanjing No. 3 Middle School in Nanjing District is very good. If Xiaoxu goes back to school, he can try to enter this school." Zhang Lingxiu met his sister's majestic gaze and moved but did not dare to speak. He hadn't even thought of it so far, so he had chosen all the schools for him. "By the way, Anan is also in that school." "Zhang Lingxiu, it's not impossible to give it a try. What if you succeed? Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 127. Seeing that her son was no longer as resistant to going back to school as he had mentioned in the juvenile detention center, Zhang Wenhui breathed a sigh of relief and made plans. Hopefully, when we move, we will hire a tutor to come over to you, make up some extra classes and try to get into the Nanjing No. 3 middle school your sister mentioned. Although Zhang Lingxiu was unsure, he still managed to nod his head when he saw Zhang Wenhui's expectant and pleased eyes. There is no need to hire a tutor, I can go to a tutoring class. As long as I study hard, the effect will be the same. My family hired a tutor for him before. At that time, I didn't think the cost of hiring a tutor was high, but given their current family situation, they couldn't afford it. Zhang Lingzi had just taken out the vibrating phone, and when she heard Zhang Lingxiu's words, she raised her head and glanced at him. The last time we met, this kid looked like a little wolf full of resistance and wariness at first. Looking at it now, he looks more like a little sheep in wolf's clothing. She clicked on the message Tong you just sent. I was drinking coffee with someone just now. What message did you send me earlier? Why did you withdraw it again? Just as she was about to reply, nothing, she saw Tong Yu's second message coming right after her. I have good news for you. The time and place for the audition of Director Wei's new play have been decided the day after tomorrow. It will be in the imperial capital, so we won't have to run back and forth. You should stay home for the next 2 days to have a good rest and reunite with your family. Stay in good condition and we will try to win the audition the day after tomorrow. Then he sent a few cheering emoticons. Zhang Lingzi responded to her with an OK emoticon. When she looked up, she saw Zhang Wenhui and Shen Yunqing both looking towards her and raising their eyebrows. Did she accidentally miss some important topic while reading the news? Zixi, if you are busy at work, go back with Yunqing first and go about your business. To be honest, seeing her daughter and son-in-law sitting so cramped in this small living room made her feel weird. It seems that we really need to change to a bigger house, otherwise our daughter and son-in-law will not have anywhere to live when they come back. Zhang Lingzi didn't know that she was already worried about this, so she stood up after hearing this. Then Yunqing and I will go back first. Compared to chatting as a family, she still felt more comfortable by herself. Shen Yunqing also stood up. When Zhang Lingzi went to pick up the bag placed on the table beside him, he took it in his hand first, then slightly bent his arms and raised his eyes to signal. Zhang Lingzi. Under the gaze of 3 pairs of eyes on the sofa next to her, she had no choice but to reach out and hold Shen Yunqing's arm, making a full gesture of affection. When Zhang Lingzi went out, she immediately pulled her hand back, then took her bag back and commented lightly, "Well done." Shen Yunqing nodded slightly, "It should be." Zhang Lingzi looked at him for a moment, then turned and went downstairs. Downstairs of the unit, Zhao Hu was squatting under a tree to get some air while playing mobile games. When he heard footsteps and looked up, he saw Zhang Lingzi walking towards the side menacingly, but her husband was following behind, like a frustrated little daughter-in-law. He was so frightened by his idea that he shivered on the spot. He quickly put away his cell phone and stood up and ran over to open the car door. "Madam, please get in the car." Zhang Lingzi looked back at Shen Yunqing who was following him, but hesitated for a moment but still did not say anything to ask him to sit in the passenger seat. After all, the car and the driver belonged to others. Not long after the vehicle started, Shen Yunqing suddenly reached out and opened the partition between the front and rear seats. After all the partitions were raised to isolate the driver's seat in front, he looked to his side with a sincere face, "Is there something I can't do well?" Zhang Lingzi's breath was stagnated by his somewhat hurt eyes. "No. It's not that it's not in place, it's that it's too in place. It's as if they are a loving couple rather than a superficial couple." She even had the illusion that the two of them were very much in love. But she is not the original owner. This illusion made her feel very awkward and a little depressed for no reason. Shen Yunqing lowered his eyes and fell into deep thought. Today's scene has actually been rehearsed in his mind several times in advance. Everyone in the Zhang family was not surprised by his son-in-law's attitude, but the feedback His Majesty gave him here was a little different from what they expected. Could it be that you are not doing well enough? When you find the house, do you want to go over and have a look? Seeing that he started to change the topic, Zhang Lingzi put aside the inexplicable discomfort in her heart and said, "Go, don't you want to be there too? After all, he still has to be the perfect son-in-law of the Zhang family. Then I'll come and pick you up tomorrow." Zhang Lingzi hesitated but nodded. Since it is a show, it must be done to the end. If the two of them go there separately, Zhang Wenhui will probably ask again. The less trouble, the better. The car door opened. Zhang Lingzi watched Shen Yunqing get out of the car first, turned around and handed over a hand. She paused and put her hand on it. When he let go, he said politely, "Thank you for accompanying me on this trip today." Shen Yunqing noticed her somewhat softened tone and couldn't help but smile. "It's not hard." Zhang Lingzi could see that Shen Yunqing's not working hard was sincere. The reason why the person in front of her wants to get a marriage certificate from her original self has become the only puzzle she can't solve at the moment. The person who solved the puzzle is trying his best to get into trouble and refuses to give her any trouble. This made her even more curious about the reason. "You're just going to keep acting with me like this. In fact, there's no need to go to such trouble." Shen Yunqing interrupted with a smile, "Miss Zhang, I still say that you are my noble person. You don't need to have any psychological burden. I am willing to do all this." "Okay," Zhang Lingzi nodded to express temporary defeat. At this moment, she really couldn't pry open a mouth that was determined not to say anything. She wanted to see if this person could continue acting with her. Watching the angry-looking figure disappear from sight, Shen Yunqing stood quietly for a moment before turning back to the car. "Let's go. The monarch and his subjects have been getting along for decades, and he understands His Majesty's character just as Your Majesty also understands him. Although His Majesty is much younger now, and his character has become more willful and willful, that is unique to young people, his temperament has not changed in his bones. If you were polite to him, he would be a little frightened. But the fact that he showed some real emotions in front of him like this shows that His Majesty did not regard him as a stranger who didn't care about him at all. What he wants is this caring that is still extremely superficial at the moment." Zhang Lingzi opened the door and entered the living room, then opened the gauze curtain on the balcony to block the sun, lowered her head and looked downstairs. Seeing Shen Yunqing standing downstairs for a while before getting in the car and leaving, I couldn't help but frown. From the time she woke up until now, she has understood the thoughts of everyone around her very well, and she can tell good intentions and bad intentions at a glance. Only this Shen Yunqing gave her the feeling of being wrapped in a layer of mist. Had she not realized that this man had no ill intentions towards her but had obvious good intentions, she would have used some means to dig out this man's background. But precisely because the other party was kind, it made her feel even more difficult to deal with. It should be treated lightly, but not seriously. How about she behave more boldly when we get along with each other in the future, and show off the energy she used to fight against her royal brothers when they were fighting for the throne? Let's see how long Shen Yunqing can endure. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 128. Zhang Lingzi thought that asking Shen Yunqing to help find a house would be faster than asking Tong Yu to help, but she didn't expect it to be so fast. She got the call this time, but she had just gotten up. "I brought breakfast. Come up." The doorbell rang. Zhang Lingzi took out a washcloth and wiped her face while walking over to open the door. When he saw the tall figure outside the door and the familiar food box, he asked, "Did you do it on purpose?" She was not awake at this time yesterday, and today it was a quarter of an hour earlier than yesterday. Is this correct? She just got up and hasn't had time to have breakfast. Of course Shen Yunqing didn't dare to nod, the freshly made crab roe buns won't taste good when they get cold. Zhang Lingzi succumbed to the temptation of delicious food. Then the same scene as yesterday morning reappeared in front of the dining table. Only this time, before Zhang Lingzi had time to finish eating, the doorbell rang again. Just as Zhang Lingzi was about to put down her chopsticks, she saw that Shen Yunqing had already stood up and walked towards the door. She stuffed the remaining half of the bun into her mouth. The door opened, and Lu Zhengzheng rushed in with a big box in her arms without even raising her head. As she walked, she said, "Sister Zixi, I'm here to deliver the clothes that the brand sent to the company. I thought you weren't up yet. It smells so good. I've even eaten breakfast. Can you still eat the breakfast I bought? What kind of breakfast did you buy?" Lu Zhengzheng paused, raised his head, and met the eyes of Zhang Lingzi, who was sitting at the dining table. "Sister Zixi. Sister Zixi is sitting at the dining table. Who opened the door for her just now?" Aware of this, Lu Zhengzheng turned around stiffly and looked at the door where she had just entered. The man was wearing a decent dark grey suit with dark patterns. He had a slender figure and clear eyebrows. He looked like a timeless and elegant picture just standing there. At this moment, the person was reaching out to gently close the door, and then walked towards the side. Lu Zhengzheng felt that her legs were weak. "Shen, Mr. Shen." Shen Yunqing nodded slightly and looked at the box she was carrying. "Do you want my help?" "No, no need." Lu Zhengzheng shook her head repeatedly and stammered, "It's just a few pieces of clothing. I'll just send them to Sister Zixi's cloakroom to sort them out." After saying that, he turned around and ran away, even forgetting to put down the breakfast on the box. Until she entered the cloakroom and put down the box, she looked at the breakfast she had forgotten for Sister Zixi and couldn't help but rub her fingers in confusion. Should she go out and give it to Sister Zixi again, or should she go out later? But there is Mr. Shen outside. Wait a minute, why is Mr. Shen at Sister Zixi's house? No wonder she acted so surprised just now, she had never seen Mr. Shen in this house before. If she had known that Mr. Shen was there, she would definitely have told Sister Zixi in advance before coming over this time, instead of just coming in so rashly. Fortunately, Zhang Lingzi helped her make the decision. "Zhengzheng, where's my breakfast?" Lu Zhengzheng turned around and saw Zhang Lingzi coming to the door of the cloakroom. She was relieved and quickly took breakfast and handed it over. "I bought the beef rice rolls and taro cheese buns that you like to eat recently." Zhang Lingzi weighed the lunch box after taking it. "Didn't you eat breakfast too? This is for the two of us." Lu Zhengzheng was about to shake her head, but her stomach growled before her. Then the mouth that had just been opened was closed again. Zhang Lingzi couldn't tell whether to laugh or cry, so he took her wrist and went out. "Let's eat first and then get busy." I'll go to the second bedroom to eat." She couldn't imagine whether she could eat her breakfast in front of Mr. Shen. Afraid of him, Zhang Lingzi raised her chin towards the dining table. "Well, it's not that I'm afraid, I'm just nervous." Shen Yunqing. Zhang Lingzi reached out and pointed in the direction of the living room when someone looked over. "You go sit on the sofa and watch TV." Lu Zhengzheng watched with wide eyes as Mr. Shen stood up obediently, walked to the living room and sat on the sofa, picked up the remote control on the coffee table, turned on the TV, and then tuned to the morning news. Zhang Lingzi didn't expect that the programs he liked to watch were the same as hers, except that the dining table was a little far away from the TV. "Turn up the volume a little louder. She can listen." Soon, the volume of the TV was turned up a little. "Is this volume okay?" "Can." Facing such a scene that was so commonplace that she often saw it in her hometown, Lu Zhengzheng didn't even know how she sat down at the dining table. Zhang Lingzi had just finished eating the crab roe buns that Shen Yunqing brought her. She only took a few bites of the rice rolls and taro cheese buns that Lu Zhengzheng brought and then put them down. When she got up and saw Lu Zhengzheng, she also stood there. When she got up, He put his hand on her shoulders and said, "Just keep eating. I'm going out later. You can go pack your clothes after breakfast." Lu Zhenzhen nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. After Zhang Lingzi walked out a few steps, she remembered Tong Yu's instructions. "Sister Zixi, Sister Tong said that when you go to the audition the day after tomorrow, you can choose me to bring you. I'll hang those sets of clothes on the outside of the closet for you later." Zhang Lingzi raised her hand and gestured, "Okay, I understand." When she changed clothes from the master bedroom's cloakroom and went out, she saw that the dining table was clean and the door to the cloakroom outside had been closed. Shen Yunqing noticed her gaze and said, "Your assistant has just finished breakfast," and went in. Zhang Lingzi walked to the door of the cloakroom and knocked on the door. The door opened a crack, revealing Lu Zhenzhen's little head. "We're going out now." Lu Zhenzhen nodded repeatedly. "Yeah, Sister Zixi, you don't have to worry about me. I'll go back by myself when I'm done." In my heart, it's time to leave. Even though she was separated from Mr. Shen by a door, she was still uncontrollably nervous. Wait a minute, will Mr. Shen live here in the future? After all, I got a marriage certificate with Sister Zixi. Then will she not be able to stay in the second bedroom even if she returns late? That's not right either. Mr. Shen and Sister Zixi should both live in the master bedroom. So when Zhang Lingzi turned around and was about to leave, her sleeves were pulled down. She looked back and saw Lu Zhenzhen asking her in an extremely quiet voice, "Sister Zixi, will Mr. Shen live here in the future?" Zhang Lingzi. She couldn't help but flick the girl's forehead with her hand. "What are you thinking in your little head? This is a special situation. We have to go there together." At the same time, he added in his mind, "People probably don't like her small place, the whole house is not as big as a small yard." Lu Zhenzhen covered her forehead with one hand and silently closed the door with the other. While I was relieved, I was also a little disappointed. In fact, it is normal for two married people to live together, but it is abnormal for two married people to live in separate houses. As for the reason for the separation between the two, she did not dare to ask. Hearing the sound of the door closing outside, she breathed a sigh of relief, put aside what was in her mind, and began to arrange her clothes seriously. Downstairs, Zhang Lingzi got into the car and waited for the car to start. After a while, she noticed that there was a small van following behind. "Who is that car behind? Used to carry luggage." "Zhang Lingzi, you are really thoughtful." "You're welcome." Thinking of the plan she made yesterday, Zhang Lingzi shut up decisively. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 129. The Zhang family's small house was busy early in the morning. Although I have only lived here for a few years, I have added a lot of things intermittently. Zhang Wenhui has long learned to live a careful life. Looking at these things, she was reluctant to throw them away or sell them as scraps. In the end, she simply packed them all up. There was no room for them in the living room, so I had to open the door and pile them up at the door of the house. The movement also alarmed the next door neighbor, Aunt Sue's house. I was stunned when I opened the door and saw the big and small bags outside. What's the matter? Xiaoxu is planning to move just after he comes back. No, when it came to moving, Zhang Wenhui felt proud even though it was also rented. My son-in-law helped us find a bigger house. He just called and will pick us up later. Did he disturb your house? Okay, we're done with it now, Sister Sue, please be patient. Aunt Sue frowned and drooped her mouth as she watched Zhang Wenhui busy. Thinking of the young man who got off the luxury car she saw yesterday, she felt jealous. Your son-in-law bought you a house, so generous. Lao Zhang and I are still less than 50, and we can't work anymore. How can we let our children buy a house for us? Aunt Sue felt a little more comfortable now, but she couldn't help but start provoking, your son-in-law looks rich, but he can't afford to buy a house to honor his father-in-law and mother-in-law. However, Zhang Wenhui didn't listen to his provocation at all. It's his own business if the son-in-law has money. If he benefits from it, it will also benefit my daughter. Besides, does buying a house count as filial piety? Shen Yunqing helped her family repay the debt back then. Although she didn't know the exact number, she knew it was enough to buy a building. If I want to give away another apartment this time, she doesn't dare to accept it. Isn't it too much? Wouldn't it be that the daughter was half ahead in their little house? How? Mom, we're here, Zhang Lingzi interrupted Aunt Sue, glanced over and then casually retracted, is everything packed? It's almost done. The luggage car is parked downstairs, let's move it. You are still thoughtful, your dad is going to call a truck to pull the goods. No one cared when Aunt Sue retreated to her home dejectedly. Asterisk. The house is an 11-story bungalow, on the 6th floor, just a 10-minute walk from Nanjing No. 3 Middle School. Zhang Wenhui stood on the smooth marble floor of the new community, looking at the descending elevator in front of her, and heard the last sentence of Shen Yunqing's introduction, this should be considered a room in the school district. The building is still so new. I heard that this kind of house is quite difficult rental. She is no longer a wealthy wife who has nothing to do with her life, so she is naturally forced to understand many more potential rules of this society. One of them is that as long as there are children at home, for the sake of their children's schooling, when buying a house in a school district is the first choice. It's okay. Shen Yunqing didn't say much, and reached out to block the elevator door that had opened. The elevator is here, let's go up and take a look at the house first. Zhang Lingzi entered the elevator last, turned around and looked at Shen Yunqing who was following her, feeling vaguely suspicious in her heart. Since this house is so difficult to rent, it took Shen Yunqing less than a day to rent it. Did he add money secretly, or did he just buy it outright with deep pockets? Shen Yunqing met Zhang Lingzi's gaze and smiled back. Zhang Lingzi looked away without leaving any trace. Why are you smiling so seductively when you have nothing to do? Ding, the elevator door slowly opened. The two of them walked out one after the other. Turning right, they saw two doors that were exactly the same except for the house number, which differed by one number. One of the doors was open. When Zhang Lingzi saw Zhu coming out of the room, she immediately figured out why Shen Yunqing was so fast. There is someone under my command. Zhang Wenhui and Zhang Runqing were welcomed in. Although I knew that if Shen Yunqing could like this house with his eyes, then this house would definitely not be much different. But after hearing Zhang Wenhui's unstoppable praise coming from inside, Zhang Lingzi still went in and followed her around. Zhu was accompanying the two elders and introduced, the house is designed with 4 bedrooms, 2 living rooms and 3 bathrooms. The layout is very square. The bedrooms are scattered around the living room, so the family can live without disturbing each other. You can look at it from the balcony looking outside. You can see Nanjing No. 3 Middle School. Zhang Lingzi was looking in the direction of Nanjing No. 3 Middle School when Zhang Wenhui held her hand and said, the bedroom is enough for now. Zixi, you and Yunqing can come back and stay when you are not busy. Zhang Lingzi. She didn't think that if she really came back here with Shen Yunqing to visit in the future, she would be able to sleep in separate rooms under the noses of the two people in front of her. Then forget it. Hurriedly changed the subject, let's go to the bedroom and have a look. This time she decided not to follow him, otherwise Zhang Wenhui would have assigned her and Shen Yunqing's rooms. Soon she and Shen Yunqing were the only ones left in the living room. The room was fully furnished and seemed to have been carefully cleaned in advance. Zhang Lingzi sat on the sofa and explained righteously, my mother just said that casually. If we come here to visit in the future, let's finish eating. You can just find a reason to leave, but you don't have to stay. Shen Yunqing nodded to express his understanding. He is not in a hurry. After looking at every corner of the house, Zhang Wenhui said there was no problem at all and she was extremely satisfied. After all, compared with the old community where they lived before, this house is much better in every aspect. Just this one, the rent is probably not cheap at this price. He Zhu glanced in the direction of his boss and quoted a number. This number is neither too much nor too little, just at the psychological bottom line of Zhang Wenhui and Zhang Runqing. It's too high for them to afford it. If it's too low, the two of them don't know the current rental market, and the son-in-law is doing charity for them. After making the decision, it's time to move the luggage. Having an elevator is much more convenient. Zhang Lingzi and Zhang Wenhui didn't even have to do anything. A few grown men moved them up in a few seconds. Zhang Wenhui asked them to sit down and rest, and she started to pack things up enthusiastically. Zhang Lingzi originally wanted to help, but seeing that she was so happy with it, and she was not familiar with the items in her luggage and didn't know where to put them, she had to sit back. However, he didn't sit there for long. Zhang Wenhui, who had gone into the kitchen to put away the pots and pans, suddenly stuck her head out and said, "Zixi, take your brother out to buy some food and come back. I remember that there was a supermarket opposite the community when I came. Let's eat at home and warm up the hot pot." Just as Zhang Lingxiu was about to stand up, an extra hand appeared on one shoulder, which prevented him from standing up. Then my brother-in-law's voice sounded in my ears, "I'll go with Zixi." Zhang Lingzi felt awkward at first when she heard Zhang Wenhui call her Zixi. Now when she heard Shen Yunqing also call her Zixi, she not only felt awkward, but also felt uncomfortable everywhere in her body. Zhang Wenhui smiled and nodded, "That's fine. Don't be in a hurry in the supermarket. Just take your time and come back before noon." Zhang Lingzi. When she went out, she heard Zhang Wenhui's voice full of relief, "Seeing that they are in a good relationship, I feel relieved." Zhang Lingzi's hand wearing the mask paused. "It's fake." A hand reached over and helped her adjust the mask string that had been accidentally twisted. Zhang Lingzi turned to look at the person who had just withdrawn his hand, then looked at the door behind him that had not been closed, and took a deep breath. "Let you act. The supermarket is not far away, and it only takes less than 10 minutes to walk there." Zhang Lingzi walked quickly, even showing a murderous look. Shen Yunqing followed leisurely, taking advantage of the fact that the person in front did not look back, with a smile on his face. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 130. There are not many people in the supermarket here, most of them are old ladies and stay-at-home mothers who live nearby. Zhang Lingzi pushed a shopping cart and went in with Shen Yunqing. She felt a little regretful after leaving. "You should give the person next to you a mask before you come in." She dug through her pockets, and luckily she still had a spare one. She quickly handed it over, "Put it on before you go shopping." Shen Yunqing took it and obediently tore open the package and put it on. Only then did Zhang Lingzi feel that the eyes of the aunts and sisters around her were no longer so intense. Passing by the snack area, Zhang Lingzi reached for the spicy strips hanging on the shelf. She saw Lu Zhengzhen eating the snack before, and she fell in love with it after it was shared. The two of them often eat together behind Tong Yu's back. 2 packs of spicy strips were thrown into the shopping cart. Zhang Lingzi pushed the cart and continued to walk forward. As she walked, she accidentally glanced at the shopping cart and paused, "Where are my spicy strips?" Shen Yunqing decisively admitted, "I put him back." Zhang Lingzi's eyes widened, "Should I let you go? That stuff is junk food, and eating it is bad for your stomach. I don't eat it as food, why not taste it once in a while? It's better not to eat." Zhang Lingzi. Just when the two of them were facing each other, neither of them convinced, a gray-haired lady carrying a vegetable basket passed by. Seeing this, she smiled kindly and said, Little girl, your boyfriend is also caring about you. The spicy strips are really good, it's not very clean. If you really want to eat it, ask your boyfriend to cook it for you, haha. Zhang Lingzi blushed because of the last laugh, but fortunately she was wearing a mask to help cover it up. Then the shopping cart in his hand was taken over by the hand on the side, and Shen Yunking's voice also rang in his ears, "Thank you, Aunt, for reminding me." Zhang Lingzi. Is this necessary in front of a strange lady? After walking all the way to the vegetable, fruit, meat, and aquatic product area at the back, Zhang Lingzi looked at the mandarin fish and several kinds of seafood that had just been killed and packed in the shopping cart, and was a little stunned when she heard an excited voice coming from the front, "Sister Zixi, Mr. Shen." Zhang Lingzi looked up and saw Su Lei, wearing a big apron, standing behind the meat counter and waving to her. She walked over and looked up and down. What a coincidence, you work here. It doesn't count as working. Seeing Zhang Lingzi coming to talk to him openly, Su Lei breathed a sigh of relief. His job was not very respectable. He was really afraid that Xiaoxu, a celebrity sister, would ignore him. "I just found a part-time job first, come on, otherwise it would be boring to stay at home." "Sister Zixi, why do you go out to the supermarket in person?" In his opinion, shouldn't assistants do all the shopping for people like Mr. Shen and Sister Zixi? "My parents and Xiaoxu have moved here to live in the community opposite. Can we go out to buy some food and eat together later?" "No, no, no," Su Lei waved his hands repeatedly, "I have a working meal here. I can't leave for too long, so I won't go over." "Sister Zixi, would you like some beef? It's all fresh." Zhang Lingzi looked at the beef on the counter, including various cuts. This was also the first time she went out to buy meat, and she really didn't know which one to choose. Just when she was about to ask Su Lei to recommend it, Shen Yunqing came over and stood beside her and said, 1 pound of beef shoulder and 1 pound of beef brisket." "Okay." While Su Lei was busy cutting and weighing the meat, Zhang Lingzi couldn't help but turn her head and look at the person standing next to her. It's hard to imagine that this person can actually buy meat. The key is that he is so proficient. "Do you usually cook by yourself?" Shen Yunqing shook his head, "No." "Just because someone likes to eat it?" Asterisk. Although Zhang Wenhui asked him to take his time shopping and not be in a hurry, looking at Shen Yunqing, who attracted a lot of attention even though he was wearing a mask, Zhang Lingzi saw that she had almost bought vegetables and meat, so she decided to pay and leave. When she was told that she was coming home a little early, she just pretended not to have heard. He Zhu and Zhao, who were also enthusiastically retained by Zhang Wenhui. When they saw their boss coming back with a large bag and a small bag, and being ordered to peel green beans and peel corn, the two of them were reluctant to hold back and took out their mobile phones to take a photo. Follow the urge to take a souvenir. Shen Yunqing looked up while he was busy. The two of them did not dare to crack melon seeds and chat with Uncle Zhang. They clapped their hands and ran to help. There is strength in numbers, and before 12 o'clock, a sumptuous-looking lunch was ready. Zhang Lingzi took a bite of the stir-fried beef that Zhang Wenhui gave her, and suddenly understood why Zhang Lingxiu didn't insist on going home for dinner yesterday. This rice is not just delicious in the literal sense, it is really not delicious. After chewing for more than a minute, Zhang Lingzi swallowed the beef in her mouth. Next, I decisively avoided the dishes Zhang Wenhui cooked, and even reluctantly gave up on my favorite beef. Looking up, he saw Shen Yunqing, who was also being cared for by Zhang Wenhui. For a while, he couldn't even move his chopsticks. His mandible with clear lines was still exerting force without leaving any trace. He suddenly felt unkind and happy. "Although I didn't drink, it took almost an hour to eat this meal, and I finally swallowed the food on the table. By the way, I also made some salt-baked green beans, just right for an after-dinner snack." Zhang Lingzi stood up, looked at Zhang Wenhui's back as he hurried to the kitchen, and looked at Shen Yunqing in a rare tacit understanding. The next second, The two of them spoke, Mom, Aunt, Yunqing, Zixi, and I have something urgent to deal with, so we are leaving first. Zhang Lingzi glanced at Zhang Lingxiu, who had not had time to stand up. Let my brother handle the snacks after dinner. Zhang Lingxiu suddenly raised her head and looked at her sister, somewhat disbelieving that she had been betrayed like this. As the two stood up together, He Zhu and Zhao Hu also stood up and followed their boss decisively. But when he walked to the door, Zhang Wenhui still chased after him and handed him a handful of salt-baked green beans. We can eat them on the way. Zhang Lingzi. Out of the door, she glanced at the green beans in her hand that looked normal, and tasted one out of curiosity. The result was not even a second after it entered my mouth. Bitter and salty, it was beyond her ability to imagine the taste of this thing. Then he stuffed the rest of what he had on hand into Shen Yunqing's hand. It's up to you, you better peel it with your own hands, don't waste it. Shen Yunqing looked at the two handfuls of beans in his hand and couldn't laugh or cry. Zhao Hu couldn't hold it back and let out a puff. He Zhu silently moved away from him when he heard the sound. Shen Yunqing looked back at Zhao Hu, transferred the beans in his hand again, and did not forget to emphasize, I peeled them with my own hands. Zhao Hu. He forced a smile but actually promised with a guilty look on his face, don't worry, boss, I will not waste anything. Just now I saw that my wife vomited after taking one bite. At worst, he could just treat it as a pill and swallow it whole.